All right, we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. Just wanted to say good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's fourth and final pollution prevention webinar. Each year, our pollution prevention program looks to host at least 4 webinars to help sort of bring new technologies, success stories, experts in certain areas to present on things that might be able to help reduce pollution or prevent pollution in the industry and manufacturing here around the state of Tennessee. So it actually it works out perfectly that this webinar is happening this week because it is National Pollution Prevention Week by the EPA. So happy that we could make this pollution prevention webinar happen during Pollution Prevention Week. If you are unaware of that, check out EPA's website. They've got a lot of information on the different pollution prevention grants that they give out and the different resources that they have for manufacturing, industry, communities, all of those things. So this webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Pollution Prevention Program, like I mentioned before, also in collaboration with Nokian Tyres and the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition. So my name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Sustainable Practices at TDEC, which stands for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And I'm going to be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful speakers. So just a couple of housekeeping things. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask those in the chat, and I'll work on getting those asked to our speakers. And, you know, we really do hope that's the hope and the benefit of a live webinar is that you can listen to a presentation and then you can in real time get any questions answered that you might have, or just add to the conversation and discussion. We like these to be, of course, a formal webinar, but there's a casual discussion base that we like to keep, you know, keep conversations going and questions being able to be asked. Now, I'm sending a chat right now to everybody. You should see that on your right-hand side. That just says that this is the chat box. You can see. Now, there is a drop-down box right next to where it says send to. Now, if you will make sure that when you're asking a question or sending a comment that the word host or all is in one of the ones that you choose. That way that I'll see that question and I can make sure that our speakers get those questions. So have any questions at all? If you want it to be a private question, don't want anybody to see it other than me, just do host, you know, and so on. So just wanted to give an overview of what is going to be covered today. Once again, wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this insightful webinar on fleet electrification and automation in Tennessee, where we are going to dive into the latest advancements in sustainable fleet management. We're going to be exploring key topics such as charging incentives, fleet electrification, automation, and all of this featuring expert perspectives from the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition. And additionally, we are going to have the EHS manager from Nokian Tyres sharing his experience with forklift electrification and automation within their tire manufacturing operations. This is a unique opportunity to learn about the benefits and challenges of fleet innovation from industry leaders. So very excited. 2 really good friends of mine that I think a lot of are going to be speaking today on this topic. What we always do before our webinars is we like to have a pre-webinar survey. So if you could pull your phones out, either go to menti.com or just scan this QR code right here. It'll bring you up to we got 4 questions, and basically it says, I feel knowledgeable about the following. So I'm going to actually go over to that. Let's see, let's share that. I'm going to share that. And so you can just 1 through 5, how strongly you feel on how knowledgeable you feel. 1 being not knowledgeable at all, 5 meaning you know everything there is to know about these topics. This just helps us, and we're going to ask the same 4 questions at the end of the webinar it helps us just grab metrics showing that these webinars actually are teaching people things, you know. So I'm going to share our desktop. So you should be able to see that right now. And the hope is that by the end of the webinar, these numbers are higher, and you know, it'll make us feel good that we were actually able to teach you something today. So I'm going to give a second to allow everyone to make their votes, fill out the survey, and then we will be on our way. Once again, if there's something that, like I mentioned before, these webinars, we like to do at least 4 of them per year, quarterly. And if there's something that would help you or you would like to talk about on our webinars, please feel free to reach out to me. You should have my email. If you don't, since you're registered for this, you will be receiving a follow-up email that will have my email on it, and you'll be able to contact me for any ideas that you might have for future webinars or workshops. So looks like we've hit sort of a lull. If you're still voting, keep doing that. And then we are going to move on with our presentations. So our first presenter, like I mentioned before, we've got the Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Nokian Tyres, Darren. And Darren, I always mess up your last name. Bakkestuen?
Yeah, of course, Bakkestuen.
For some reason, I always mess it up. But Darren is a good friend of mine, a great environmental health and safety manager over at Nokian Tyres. Been able to go there and see their facility and their processes, and just very, very impressed with all things that they have going on over there, especially with their sustainability efforts. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to Darren. He's going to talk about the electrification and automation of their material handling and the logistics using AGVs.
All right, thank you, Caleb. And kind of a fun little thing regarding my name. It's actually Norwegian, and Nokian Tyres is a Finnish company. And for the first time in my entire life, anytime I travel to Finland, I never get asked how to pronounce my name. They share a border, it's different languages, but the inflections and pronunciations are close enough where that was an interesting change for me when I've traveled there. But yeah, Darren Bakkestuen, I'm environmental health and safety, as well as security, sustainability for Nokian Tyres. And for those that aren't familiar, we're a relatively new facility in kind of east central Tennessee in Dayton. Company itself is over 100 years old, but this is our first manufacturing facility in the U.S. And yeah, so my background educationally is primarily in health and safety. Have had increasing responsibilities in environmental throughout my career, and along with that then growing involvement and responsibility in sustainability, and very much so here in my current role with Nokian Tyres. And sustainability is really a big part of who we are as a brand and as a company. So I want to talk a little bit about the specific topic of AGVs, and I'll start out just with kind of high-level background. If those on the call maybe don't know what they are, I've never heard the term, get into that and how they fit in business in general, and then move on to the kind of the bread and butter, which would be how we've implemented them into our processes in Dayton. So AGV stands for Automated Guided Vehicle. I've heard some people refer to them as autonomous guided vehicles, which is actually not true. Guided vehicle is more accurate. There's another type of unmanned guide vehicle called an AMR, which is an autonomous mobile robot, which is a little bit different. predominantly in the way that they navigate. An AGV can only travel on a predetermined path. The way they do that depends on the specific AGV. Ours, for example, use a vision system and reflectors on the walls, along with Wi-Fi to determine the location and follow that path. Other systems I've seen will actually have either a wire embedded in the ground that it follows, or even just a painted or printed stripe that they follow. So that is how an AGV operates. An AMR, if you've ever been to, I know Atlanta, Georgia has Waymo. I actually, over Labor Day weekend, went to Phoenix, Arizona for a little vacation, and I took a Waymo for the first time, which is a truly autonomous, like Uber essentially, and that would be an example more like an AMR, where it's able to correct course and move around objects. And if I had to say there's one downside to AGVs, it's that they cannot navigate around things that come up. And for us, we're sharing our pathways with traditional style forklifts, pedestrians. Our maintenance teams have tricycles with toolboxes on the back. And if any of those things end up being left in an area they're not supposed to be, then the AGVs kind of get backed up. So the one downside that I see is really that. But they actually were invented in the 1950s, which is I was surprised to learn. Picture there of the first AGV. And of course, they've only progressed as technology advances. As far as what they can do, really they're just a transport device. In a warehouse situation, which is one of the common applications, they're moving materials, pallets, bins from point A to point B, or in some instances, I've seen applications where instead of a traditional conveyor system, the AGVs themselves are acting basically as the conveyor and moving a widget, if you will, right, along a process line. People are adding to it as it passes by their work areas. So anything that would be in that realm of activities are things that AGVs can do. A couple different styles that are out there. The one that we use is the one on the far left that you see. It's a forklift style AGV, which I would say is the most advanced of these 5 types. But carts and tuggers are similar in that they're both just moving a rack with parts from point A to point B, with the difference only being that a cart style is where the rack or the cart is an integral part of the AGV, whereas a tugger is like the picture you see on the far right, where it's picking up wheeled carts that can be dropped off and left at various locations. Unit load and heavy haul are more specific to the type of load that's being handled, with heavy haul, of course, being something that's designed for very heavy loads, and the one in kind of the center bottom would be example of those sort of AGVs. So now to kind of get into how our AGVs operate, our guys like to get a little bit creative. You can see they've added the giant googly eyes to many of our AGVs. But as I mentioned, all of the AGVs that we operate in Nokian Tyres are the forklift style. And in this picture, you can really see the primary way in which they're used is to transport pallets of sheeted rubber. So it's really an internal warehouse logistics system. And those pallets of sheeted rubber are picked up at the end of our mixing process, and they go into in-process flow racks, and then from the flow racks to the customers or internal customers, which is in our components department, and then they're also managing all of our empty pallets. I'll show some examples of those things. So here, end of the line, the mixing process is very complicated and it's multi-step. But in essence, what you get is all the raw materials get mixed in a mixer, similar to like mixing a ingredients for baking, and it processes the rubber into flat sheets that get stacked on a pallet like you see on the left there. That pallet, when it comes out of the mixer, sends a signal to the AGV management system, and the AGVs will come and pick up that pallet. It knows when it receives that order what is on that pallet and where it needs to go, and it will deliver it to the in-process flow rack, which you see on the right-hand side. So we've actually got two different flow racks. The ones in this particular picture happen to be the basically the first pass batches of rubber. These end up coming back to the mixers, and they go through, and we add additional materials to create the final batch of rubber that is ready to move on to the next part of the process. So all of that internal handling and management of inventory is managed by the software that runs the AGVs. I'll show a screenshot of what that kind of looks like later on. So after the mixing is done, we've got the flow racks that are full of what we call final batch. It's ready to go on to manufacturing individual components of the tire. And these are all first in, first out flow racks. So the AGVs basically operate on a keep full system. They will receive a signal from individual areas downstream of this process saying, hey, there's no longer a full rack or a full pallet of materials in spot A. The AGV will then go to where it knows there are full pallets of that material and then deliver it to the other side of the plant, where we have either flow racks that sit in front of another process or another machine, or for machines that don't use large quantities or where they only use one type of rubber, there's spots indicated on the floor. And in both of those, it's a little bit hard to see on the screen here. I've kind of circled them in red. I don't think my mouse is showing up on your screens, but it's basic sensors that are just like proc sensors to tell the AGV system whether or not there's material present or not. On the empty pallet side, when the operators are consuming the rubber and as they generate empty pallets, there are designated locations where these get stacked. So the system will know when the first pallet is placed. If you look at the picture on the right, you'll see kind of in the middle of that yellow rack down near floor level a hole in that in the rack where there's a sensor, so it'll know, hey, someone has started a new inventory of pallets. As those stack, once that 10th pallet is stacked, it'll make the next sensor indicating to the system that there is a stack of pallets ready to come back to mixing to be repurposed. If someone adds an 11th, there's an additional sensor, stack's too high, and it won't work for our process. So the AGV will not pick that up until someone would go through and remove that 11th pallet. So kind of visually what that system looks like, and this is a little bit hard to make sense of without knowing kind of the layout of the factory, but this is essentially showing the physical layout of the AGV path as well as every single inventory location for a pallet of rubber within our process. Now, of course, it's not to scale, but it's color-coded, so every different color box that you see is a different recipe of rubber. Different components use different compounds. The white locations are areas where there's currently nothing in that spot. And then on the bottom, you'll see the 4 illustrations of an AGV. This is a top-down view, so they kind of look like, to me, they look like electrical components or something. But that's a top-down view of the AGV with the fork sticking out. So on that screen, at any time when one of our operators or remotely in like our control rooms, we can pull this up and see where the AGV is located in the factory, what load it has on its forks, from where that load came from, and to where to what location it's going to be delivering it, as well as the battery levels and all of that. So it gives a real good high-level overview of where everything is. And this eliminates a lot of errors since we're not relying on humans to choose the correct rack and deliver to the correct location. The AGVs, as long as the correct compound is in that rack, which it should be as long as the information that they are receiving is correct, we'll never have the wrong material going to the wrong location, and we're always going to have material available for when that downstream process is pulling. Of course, you might be thinking, like a lot of our employees when we hire them in, like, how is this even safe? There are a number of safety features built into these devices, and really no different than any other piece of equipment where you rely on e-stop buttons as well as light curtains and safety scanners. The difference being that this piece of equipment is mobile versus stationary, but in the same way that we protect against mechanical motion and in running, nip points and things on a piece of stationary equipment, the movement of this equipment throughout our facility is controlled by similar systems. So there are a couple different laser scanners that basically monitor in the direction of travel, either fore or aft of the machine. These typically travel with the forks trailing behind it. And so it's looking a couple inches off the ground in a flat plane. I represented that here with those red lines. And there's different safety zones that are set up. So looking to the illustration there on the bottom on the left side, I've got 3 different colors. Of course, this isn't to scale, but it's got, when you make that first zone, it would sound its horn and flash some strobe lights. When you make the second one, it would slow its speed, and then once you make the third zone, the AGV itself would stop. So that's in the direction of travel. All along the perimeter of these are bump stops. So if you were to just kind of kick it with your foot, if you've got safety bump stops on any equipment, it would be the same as those, as well as standard e-stop push buttons on all 4 sides. So we've never had an incident with these. The company that makes the equipment that we purchase is called Rockla. They've never had an incident with any of their forklifts with other customers either. So feel very comfortable working in and around these in our factory. And then to kind of tie it all in with sustainability, of course, every user is going to have differing benefits that are applicable to their business. Being a new factory, it wasn't a situation where we were moving from internal combustion forklifts to electric forklifts. But of course, energy efficiency is notable. Of course, they are fully electric. Our entire fleet, including the manual traditional forklifts, are electric. But one of the potential benefits, since they are operating independent of human interaction, is if you had a warehouse that was unmanned, they can operate in complete darkness, so you would save on some of your illumination costs. We're staffed. We have employees in pretty much every part of our operation, so it's not something that we can do, but that is notable for other customers. From an emission standpoint, even though they're electric, one of the things that I can attest to is that an AGV is going to operate predictably, and it's always going to be operating in the most efficient manner. Unlike human operators that may accelerate quickly, stop quickly, or perhaps even use the forklift for purposes other than intended, right? To drive to the restroom or the break room, or maybe to the door on their way in or out. AGVs are only operating for value-added purposes. From a safety standpoint, like I said, never had an incident involving an AGV and a person, whereas forklifts have that human element, so there's always going to be a little bit of a risk factor when humans are the operator. So this eliminates one of our, I think the human-operated forklifts present a big risk anywhere, so I very much welcome the AGVs. From a waste standpoint, I think for us specifically, like I mentioned, if we if we ever have a situation where the incorrect material is used to produce a component of a tire, the ramifications of that can be quite serious, and it becomes a safety issue for our customers down the road if it were to make it out the door, which would be highly unlikely. But this really eliminates, again, the probability of errors from having incorrect material in the wrong location. So that's a big impact on our internal waste numbers. AGVs never need to take a break other than a charge. I didn't mention earlier, but each AGV has its own parking location, and at that parking location, it is automatically charging in a similar way. Now that most cell phones, you place them on a wireless charging mat, the AGV batteries are charging in a similar fashion. As far as like longevity and lifespan, the expected lifetime of an AGV is 15 to 20 years. However, with modernization packages that Rockwell offers, we foresee that these will be in operation substantially longer than that if we implement those modernization packages. And that may be improvements to the navigation systems, navigations to the type of sensors that they use. I think that every generation is a little bit better than the previous. We actually just ordered 4 additional AGVs that were delivered a couple weeks ago, and they've got additional vision systems and sensors that the first generation didn't have, so that can only make these more efficient. And I would expect some of those modernization packages would incorporate some of those technologies. So to kind of just wrap it up, you know, we're have been and always will be interested in the investment in technology and automation to streamline our process. And it's a big part of how we are as profitable as we are. AGVs played a big part in this, and we see these fleets as being highly reliable with almost no downtime, with, as I mentioned, the consistent inventory management that doesn't require the human interaction, and they've proven themselves as being safe and part of our sustainability efforts. So that was the extent of my content. Of course, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those now, or I'll stay on and you can ask them at the end.
Thanks, Darren. It's always cool to see. Well, get to hear. You know, I've been able to visit your facility and see them in action, but well, to hear you sort of break down the pros and cons of them are really helpful, I think, especially to the audience. So appreciate that presentation. Yeah, if you have any questions for Darren, I don't see any that have came in yet, send those in the chat box, and I'll make sure that he hears those questions, and then we can get those answered. Next, we're going to move right on into our next presentation. Next, we have Daniel Tixe. They are the Chief of Staff of the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition. Good friend of mine as well, and excited Daniel, to hear you tell us a little bit about the progress here in Tennessee of electric vehicle fleet adoption.
Thanks, Caleb. Really happy to be here and chat a little bit about electric vehicles in Tennessee. Before I get to that stuff, I wanted to just talk a little bit about our organization and what we do across the state and nationally to support clean transportation, and that'll come up later as well. I represent the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition. We're one of Tennessee's 2 Clean Cities coalitions. We are East Tennessee, and there's also Middle West Tennessee Clean Fuels, which is run out of Nashville. One of our largest and most successful programs is called Drive Electric Tennessee, and we are the administrators of that program, but this is like our coalition itself, a collection of stakeholders across the state that are working to make sure that vehicle electrification in Tennessee is at pace or better than the adoption for the rest of the country. In part because a lot of the EVs that we are now seeing on U.S. roads are produced in Tennessee, not to mention many of the parts. Tennessee has become a real hotbed of economic investment towards electric vehicles, and we want to make sure that Tennesseans can enjoy the benefits of those vehicles in addition to the job creation that's happening in the state. And of course, I want to plug, and Caleb, I apologize, I'm going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion. There is now a Tennessee-wide specialty license plate that you can get from the county clerk's office, just like any Tennessee specialty license plate like Friends of the Smokies that you might see driving around Tennessee. About 50% of the proceeds of your specialty registration fee will go to Drive Electric Tennessee projects and programs across the state, and you can show off your enthusiasm and support of electric vehicles. And sometimes people don't see it, and I just want to point it out. Many of us missed that old, beautiful Tennessee license plate with the Smoky Mountains in the background, all smoky, hazy. And we put them back with lightning bolts for this license plate. So if you missed the mountains and you want a little bit of a different take on that, pick up our plate and support electric and no tailpipe transmission across Tennessee. I wanted to show off the variety of folks that we work with. We have great relationships with folks in Tennessee and across the country. We are a large tent, as you'll see later on. We don't just work with electric vehicles, but we work with alternative fuels and advanced vehicle technologies of all sorts. And we work from small municipalities all the way up to big national or multinational corporations like Waste Management. No matter the size of your organization, fleet or otherwise, we're happy to help you with technical assistance, education, outreach and promotion for great environmental and clean transportation work that you're doing, and making connections when you need or want to learn more about potentially electrifying your fleet. If you want to pursue those conversations, if you ask me, East Tennessee Clean Fuels should be one of your first calls. Just going to quickly go over what I want to talk about today. First, I want to give kind of a nationwide picture of where we're at along with recent shifts in EV adoption. And then I want to push to East Tennessee. That's what we focus on in terms of the real reductions of emissions. There's GGEs you'll see here, and that stands for gasoline gallon equivalent. Speaks for itself. It's a unit of energy that is equivalent to the same amount of energy in a gallon of gasoline. And GHGs, which are greenhouse gas emissions. Those are the two main items that we are looking to reduce across Tennessee. And then really asking, considering just electric vehicles only, what fleets are hastening adoption already in Tennessee? I'm going to give 3 examples, 3 very different fleets doing very different but still very cool work with electrification in Tennessee. So let's start and let's talk a little bit about PEV sales. PEV stands for plug-in electric vehicle. We make these distinctions because PEVs are a different sort of vehicle than a BEV, a battery electric vehicle, and different than a conventional hybrid like a Toyota Prius. Toyota Prius is a great car, great conventional hybrid. It does not plug in to the wall. It doesn't have a battery that you can charge. Its battery is charged through usage of its engine while driving. PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, are ones that you can plug in but still have a gas engine in them. And then you have BEVs, which are battery electric vehicles. They don't got a tailpipe. They don't have any engine in them. They are electric only. PEVs is a catch-all term, and it includes plug-in hybrids and full battery electric vehicles. Now you can see over the course of, and this map is from, or this chart is from February 2011 through August 2023, and you can see starting around, just at the end of 2020, we start to see a huge uptick in sales of electric vehicles. Now, a lot of that's driven by Tesla. I know this is really small, and I'm not going to blow it up and go through every vehicle, but you see the blue and the light blue and dark blue, that's the Tesla Model 3, and this is the Tesla Model Y, which is one of the best-selling cars in the world. So they definitely contributed to some of those sales, but you can see the share of the rest is almost equivalent to Tesla's sales, and that's movement in the right direction. And here's the same map but a year later. So as you can see, we've had a few bumps in the road, but the adoption trend is still, I think, pretty clearly strong in terms of the number of vehicles that are being sold period over period. I think it's what I'd like to find out more about, and I don't have enough information yet, is what's going on with this spike right here. But enough about the national picture. I want to drill down and focus more on Tennessee numbers and Tennessee trends when it comes to electrification. Now, you're going to see something interesting here, which is that, so this is a chart that charts the GGE, or again, gasoline gallon equivalent reductions of all of the stakeholders of the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition. And that involves large-scale partners like Waste Management that operate across the state, all the way down to your small lawnmower fleet that operates electric or propane-powered lawnmowers. And you can see these items are broken down by fuel. And that's one of the things I wanted to point out when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing your gasoline usage. Electric is a great and growingly great option right now, but there are other alternative fuels that can also potentially fit your needs, like propane or renewable propane, E85 or ethanol, various different kinds of natural gas like liquefied, compressed, or renewable natural gas, renewable diesel and biodiesel, things like that. But focusing on electric, you can see that the PEVs is this growing number here. So really the trend has started exploding in Tennessee from just about 2021 onwards. We've started to see massive adoption. And I can tell you right now, there are about 33,000 electric vehicles currently registered in the state of Tennessee, and that is up from significantly less over the past maybe 5 years ago. And so the adoption trend is strong, and that's happening both at an individual level and what we're seeing at a fleet level. Here's another breakdown of what's really happening when it comes to the different fuels that our stakeholders work with, and what is it doing to reduce gasoline usage, and what does that look like broken down? So right here, we see a whole bunch of different strategies to reduce gasoline usage. We got our alternative fuel vehicles. We have what's very relevant to this conversation, electric and plug-in vehicles. Then we have various smaller items like idle reduction, fuel economy improvements, off-road vehicles, etc. These electric and plug-in vehicles account for almost 30% of the nearly 24 million gallons of gasoline that did not get burnt in 2023 because of the alternative fuels and electric vehicle use in Tennessee. So I think that's really cool and really illustrates kind of the power of electrification, not to mention the other alt fuels, but focusing on electrification to reduce pollution and reduce emissions, both for our overall environment and for health on the ground. And then this chart on the right really just breaks down the different alternative fuels that we work with. And again, electric is showing really just about 30% of those as well. Lastly, focusing on greenhouse gas emissions. So electric, about 25, just about a quarter of the almost 200,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions in Tennessee that we tracked in 2023 came from the usage of electric and plug-in vehicles, both in fleets and by individuals. And then of the alternative fuels usage, electric is a growing piece of that too. These numbers were, again, in 2020, they were probably closer to 5%. So the number of fleets and individuals that have decided that it is the right time to investigate if electric options work for them, a lot of people are deciding that it's right now. And this piece of the pie chart will continue to grow. I would be surprised if it was not close to 50% in less than 2 years. And then here is a chart that really just shows the trend from 2019 onwards of plug-in electric vehicle adoption in Tennessee. The pink purple bars are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs again. The blue bars are BEVs, battery electric vehicles. That's electric only, no tailpipe. And you can see there is a strong trend for growth over the course of the past 5 years. We are expecting this trend to continue, in part because there are just so many options available right now for fleet and individual solutions, and more coming every day. I think that, if I were to look at the availability of electric vehicle models 3 or 4 years ago, when the public conversation about electric vehicles was really getting started, to now, we are in a different world. There are electric garbage trucks. There are electric port stowage vehicles. There's so many different options that are available right now or coming in the next 6 to 12 months that things are going to continue changing more and more rapidly. And with that, I want to just talk a little bit about what's happening in Tennessee, just examples of Tennessee fleet EV growth. And I'm going to focus on 3 different examples. One of them's in West Tennessee, one of them's in Middle Tennessee, and one of them's in East Tennessee. While our offices in East Tennessee are based in Knoxville and our sister coalition, Middle West Tennessee Clean Fuels, is based in Nashville, we do a lot of work in West Tennessee as well, and we're looking to expand our reach into West Tennessee more in 2025. So let's first start in West Tennessee with the Shelby County Roads, Bridges, and Engineering Department. So as a result of their 2020 Climate Action Plan, the Shelby County and Memphis Office of Sustainability and Resilience applied for and won DOE funding in 2020. Now, this is something that you're going to see if you are a fleet, whether it's municipal or whether it's private, that is looking to electrify. There are an enormous number of funding opportunities available right now, and through the next couple of years, most likely, be it tax credits or otherwise, to be able to support you as you potentially electrify your fleet or your organization. And so Shelby County is one example of a fleet that successfully applied for funding and used that to support their fleet's electrification project. So they included in the application, they were basically asking for 1 Lion 6 all-electric tire truck, 4 Ford F-150 Lightning trucks. They are the ones you can buy at a Ford dealership today. And then several DCFC or DC fast charge units and a handful of high amperage level 2 chargers. I'm not going to go do a deep dive into the different charging standards right now. Suffice it to say, DC fast charge is the really fast stuff, the stuff you tend to see along highway corridors that'll get you 80% of your battery back in half an hour to 45 minutes. Level 2 chargers are the kind of chargers that you're more likely to see in someone's garage or at a shopping plaza. They tend to charge more slowly. They're using the same outlet as your dryer uses at home, and they'll charge up, maybe you're going to get 25 to 30 miles an hour as you're charging. So that's kind of a more overnight solution if you're looking to go from, say, 20% battery to 100%. Like every project like this, when you're implementing new technology, whether it's electric or otherwise, they experience some bumps along the way. They had to pivot a few times, in part because there were some issues with the clearance side of the Lion electric truck, kind of ran into some issues there. It seemed like Ford wasn't quite ready to train folks in a fleet on how to use the Ford F-150 Lightnings. They got passed around to multiple Ford contacts while they were figuring that out. Happily, though, it's a really easy vehicle to use and doesn't require a huge amount of extra training to use it along the way. We have a program called Rural Reimagined, where folks who live in the Appalachian regions of Tennessee can borrow a Ford F-150 Lightning at no cost for 2 weeks. And we do a quick 15-minute overview when we're handing the car off, and that's enough. People figure it out from there. It's pretty straightforward. And then with the level 2 chargers, there's still bumps and hiccups with this technology, especially when you're dealing with installations that are brand new, when you have to build in, potentially new infrastructure to get those stations installed. There's almost always going to be implementation hiccups along the way, dealing with the software on the charging stations, things like that. And then, in this case, there was, it wasn't recognizing the charging stop point, so it was continuing to deliver electricity to the vehicle even after the battery was charged to 100%, which isn't necessarily a dangerous thing, but it is more of a, number one, a power waste thing, and number two, charging your battery beyond 100% is not a good way to maintain your battery over time. So they dealt with things like that and ended up with a pretty amazing initial start to their program. Here's some photos of the work that's done. Here's the Lion electric truck right here. It has been working pretty flawlessly beyond those clearance issues. We got the Ford F-150 Lightning here, the level 2 charging stations, and then the DC fast charge stations right here. So these folks have really built out a really good starting point for an electric vehicle fleet. They have plans to continue to electrify, and this was kind of their first stab into this world. But I've been impressed with what they've done, and I think that this is a start that they're going to be able to build on. And it looks like, and you can see in that bottom picture on the right-hand side, they've actually done some future-proofing. This is basically an installation site that's ready for more charging equipment when they want to expand. So it looks like what they did is they said, let's build out this entire row with the potential to install charging stations at. We won't buy all the equipment yet. We don't need 10 chargers right now, but in 5 years we might. And so they've built in something right here so that they can expand relatively easily without that upfront make-ready cost. I wanted to talk about next a fleet in Middle Tennessee, in Clarksville to be precise, American Snuff. It's quite a name. They produce multiple lines of tobacco products near Clarksville, and now you see, oh, I get it, American Snuff. They had complaints about diesel emissions, which is pretty common for when you're working in buildings with diesel vehicles, terminal tractors, etc. It's not fun. I've worked some jobs before where I was exposed to diesel exhaust relatively frequently, and I would feel sick and get headaches relatively frequently, and that was only for a small amount of time. It's also been shown that exposure to diesel exhaust lowers test scores for students when they're exposed to diesel exhaust riding the bus. So it's just a good thing to avoid altogether. So, like many small companies, they didn't have the capacity to, dig in with a whole task force to explore the idea of, what they could do to get rid of this problem. They just said, hey, one employee, can you go take a look at electric terminal tractors? And that process ultimately turned into determining that they wanted to try three actually of the Orange EV electric terminal tractors that company now produces. And those have been, actually, the number of hiccups in this story have been really minimal. These vehicles have worked really well. I'm going to show you some pictures of them right now. But yeah, essentially, these are the 3 vehicles that are now working at American Snuff. They were able to get their charging infrastructure installed with minimal cost. And so what that means is that what they pay for electricity is significantly less than what they were paying for diesel fuel to power these vehicles. Since these vehicles don't really leave the site, they didn't need to install really high capacity charging. A level 2 system would suffice. They can charge them overnight because these vehicles, I'm trying to remember, I believe they have a 60 to 100 mile range, and so you're probably not going to be doing more than that on a site in any given day. So they're charging, and I'm trying to remember what they are paying for electricity, but their fuel savings for this project are considerable, and that's even taking into account the initial upfront expense of buying the tractor. Interestingly enough, I believe that American Snuff is one of the examples that they did not ask for any funding. They did this themselves. They decided they wanted to pursue this and just went for it. So it is possible. You don't need funding to electrify part of your fleet or part of your organization. And last, I want to talk about stuff that's been going on in East Tennessee, electric school buses, another great example of a vehicle type that started hitting the road in the past 3-4 years or so, and is really starting to take off because the electrified version of these school buses works for many of the applications that school districts and their school bus fleets have. So I wanted to talk about 4 different examples in East Tennessee, because there's a lot of electric school bus adoption in East Tennessee, and really Tennessee in general right now, and that matches a trend that we're seeing across the country. I want to talk about Washington County, Bledsoe County, the city of Athens, and Union County. So Washington County, they were the first electric bus in the state, and TVA and a local power company brought the dollars to make it happen. They had assistance from some of their local supporters and some of their statewide supporters. And we've had such good feedback from this. The driver, and we often want to go to the driver because it's important to understand, the person who's using these vehicles day in and day out, they're a pretty important factor in determining whether or not a new fleet electrification project is going to work. And what the driver reports back is that he loves it. Never give me a diesel bus again. I want to use these Bluebird electric buses when I'm driving in the future. Bledsoe County won multiple rounds of the EPA funding for clean school buses. They won 2 in one round and 2 in another round, and they're going with international buses. And so one of the interesting things it's going to be to see over the next few years as these buses are fully, these bus programs are fully implemented, it's going to be interesting to see how these buses compare, how the technology on them compares, and what new features end up being something that everyone wants, and what some of the stuff on the buses ends up being forgotten. Moving on to the city of Athens, they won 5 in the recent EPA grant round, and they are installing DC fast charging for each bus. Now, what that means is that they'll be able to charge their buses probably in the span of about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to get them up from 0 to 100%, if that was something that they needed to do, which is a lot faster than an overnight situation. So in their case, they may want to do a route in the morning, come back, charge up for an hour, and then do their route in the afternoon, and that would effectively or potentially double the range of the bus on a given day. So while DC fast charge stations are significantly more expensive to install, they decided to go with it because the way they're strategizing the rollout of the routes with these new buses worked better if they had the ability to charge them quickly over lunch, for example. And they're using the Thomas-built Julie buses, which I believe are the newest electric vehicle buses that we've seen in Tennessee so far. So yeah, we're interested to see how those folks think these buses work. And then in Union County, finally, they have 2 EPA school buses that they won from the last rebate round. And they're using level 2 chargers right in the parking lot next to the school. So they're not going for a very expensive setup. It sounds like they got the cheapest option available that was going to work for them. And so level 2 chargers almost certainly mean they're going to be plugging those buses in at the end of the day. And then in the morning, unplugging them, they should be fully charged with level 2. And what that means compared to what the city of Athens is doing is that they won't be able to do, they need to choose their route accordingly to make sure that the maximum range of the bus, which is for most of these electric buses around 150 to 180 miles on a single charge. That'll be less when you got hills, that'll be less in cold weather, et cetera, et cetera. But knowing that range, and the real life range is probably closer to a 150 than it is to 180, knowing that range essentially ensures that the school bus district will be able to plot those routes and knowing that it won't run out of battery by the end of the route. So here are the 4 counties that I was just talking about, or areas that I was just talking about right here. This is a part of the TNB program where we've been trying to reach out to school bus districts across Tennessee to make sure they know about the EPA funding that's available. And here are some pictures. This is Washington County Schools with their electric school bus. Here's Athens with one of theirs. Here's Union County with one of theirs. And that's it. My information is right here. We are always happy to have conversations with organizations, fleets, and even individuals if you're interested in exploring electric options for your fleet, if you're interested in understanding how your organization can become more sustainable in terms of transportation, if you're interested in learning how you can save money and maintenance headaches by adopting alt fuels technology, Drive Electric Tennessee and East Tennessee Clean Fuels are at your service. We receive funding from partners like you in addition to the Department of Energy and other national partners to do work like this across the state, and we have funded time to provide you with technical assistance for any of the things that you might need in this space. Thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure talking with you folks. My contact information is right here, and please do reach out if you have any questions or you want to start a conversation about electrifying your fleet. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Daniel. That was awesome. I get to hear you talk about this, and for the Sustainable Transportation Forum and Expo, but I feel like every time that I hear a presentation that you do, I learn something else. So really cool, and thanks. I appreciate the regional approach to showing how organizations have been implementing electrification in their fleets, and they're it's funny. American Snuff is actually one of our Green Star partners, and we actually had our pollution prevention workshop there, and got to actually see those. So that was,
awesome.
without you and I even talking about that beforehand, you were able to put that in there. And so I don't know if there's anybody that's in the audience that was at our workshop, but it's just interesting because they weren't planning on doing that, but it just made a lot of sense. And I think that you see that a lot in industry, that electrifying fleets is not something that you sort of have in mind until you realize the just outright benefits of it. And there could be and if there's monetary assistance through grants or things like that puts the icing on the cake. So
absolutely. I mean, the funding definitely helps, but we've been working in this space for about 20 years, and folks can do this without funding. In particular, and that's the thing to highlight, is that there are economic benefits. You save money with this stuff. It's not. Don't get me wrong. I do this for the environment. That's my passion, and pollution reduction. But I know a lot of the folks we work with do this because they save money, and that is a perfectly reasonable, perfectly valid reason to do this stuff. You need not be a total environmentalist to go electric. They're fun to drive, and they save you money.
Absolutely. And like you said, what I try to do, I try to be a resource for manufacturing and industry in this state. And the best way to help these environmental health and safety managers at facilities is by taking these energy efficiency or any type of sustainability project and turning that into a monetary savings number. That's how you're going to get the the ROIs, or so really figuring out how to talk the talk when it comes to monetary savings is how you're going to get these implementations done. So appreciate your insight here, and I hope everyone makes sure that they reach out to Daniel if you have any questions on anything that was mentioned. I'm not seeing many questions come through right now. I'm going to go ahead and move us over to the post-webinar survey. If everyone can go ahead and scan that and vote for us. Same questions as before. Just hoping that this has been a learning opportunity for you guys, and that you were able to see. And after the webinar, hopefully you're a little bit more knowledgeable on the four types of, and I actually meant to say this at the very beginning. I usually try to tell our speakers not to vote at the beginning because clearly they know a lot about the subjects. But yeah, I'm gonna let me pull up, and it's actually showing. Oh, look at there, able to see that we are significantly higher than before. So that's exactly what we're looking for these webinars. And so if, like I mentioned before, if anybody has ideas or topics that they want to talk about or that they would like to learn more about for our pollution prevention resources, we do in-person workshops, like I mentioned, generally around the mid to end of the summer. And like I was mentioning, I had that at American Snuff. And then we do quarterly webinars as well. All the time we're looking for speakers and topics and things that can really help you guys. That's the reason that we do these. So if you have any ideas and want to be a part of our webinars or our resources, we really hope that you'll reach out to us. And we also do a survey each year. So now that you've been a part of the webinars, you probably will end up getting our survey that can help us, help look at topics that are wanted, or more information. So like I mentioned before, if you have any questions that you thought that Darren or Daniel could answer for you, and you just haven't thought of them, you're eating dinner tonight, and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have asked that. Feel free to email. You saw their contact information, but you also have my contact information. So make sure to reach out to me, send me those questions, and I'll work on getting those answered. And then once again, wanted to thank our speakers for taking the time to inform us on this important topic. And also, we couldn't have these webinars without our audience. So thanks everyone for registering and attending. Like I was mentioned, this webinar recording and the presentation slides will be available on our website. Also, we'll be sending out a follow-up email next week with all of that information on it. So if you don't have it, my email is Caleb, C-A-L-E-B, .powell, P-O-W-E-L-L, @tn.gov. Look forward to hearing from you guys, and everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Caleb, and thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time, and let me know if I can help with any of your electrification needs.